Now, as I've just explained at the top of the program, there is another hit to the cost of living with the excise on alcohol rising by almost 2% again today. A schooner, that's 425 mils. In South Australia, they'll call that a pint. So it's a bit hard comparing these the nomenclature of our booze across the various states. But it's now going to cost over $10. That's $10 for a pint in most states, or a schooner in most states. A pint in South Australia. Now this is $20 from each slab of beer, ending up in the government's hands. If you add GST as well, of course, it's more than $25 a slab of beer going in tax. It's a big worry for pubs and clubs still trying to recover from lockdown, of course. Stephen Ferguson is the CEO of the Australian Hotels Association. He joins me now from Canberra. Now, Stephen, on one level, this is a biannual increase in excise that you've come to expect. But, of course, with the cost of living problems so high at the moment and inflation so high, it's a big jump and it hits people when they don't really have a spare dollar per beer.
That's right, Chris. And one of the problems is it's a cost that hotels, clubs and restaurants can't control. They can control their energy costs by perhaps turning the lights off a bit earlier, using less air conditioning. They can control insurance costs by shopping around. They can control interest costs by borrowing less money, changing the way they structure, going to a different bank. But one of the costs they can't control is this incessant every 6 months increase to excise, which ultimately has to get passed back to the consumer.
Well, it's nearly 50% of the cost of a beer. I wonder whether when you charge people for a beer, you should say it's $5 for the beer and $5 for Canberra.
Well, I like to tell people the first couple of sips you have are for the government and the rest are for yourself to enjoy. But, put it in context of a small country pub that sells 15 kegs a week, which would be sort of average, sort of bush pub that you might see. Their costs are about $1,100 a week and sort of over $50,000 a year. And that's before you look at spirits and wine that they serve as well. So that's a massive impost, within that business that they have to pass through to government. They've got to pass it through to their consumers first and then pass it on. We've been talking to, and this problem's been going on for 35 years. In the old days, governments used to sort of have the courage to, every budget, announce that, beer and cigs were going up. Now it's just hidden away in the Treasury numbers. Last Friday, I think there were 12 announcements by government ministers, not one dealing with excise, but that's a number that was going to raise $1 billion over 3 years. But yet, no one talking about it. So it's a hidden tax, and the government, no government, respective of colour, ever wants to talk about it.
No, and as I said at the top of the program, they love indexation when it increases the amount of tax they get in, but they don't index our tax thresholds so that inflation stops us going up into a higher tax threshold than we should be paying. So they win both ways. Heads, the government wins. Tails, we lose.
Yeah, well, Treasury's full of smart people and they work out taxes like that. In the case of excise, it's only a small amount that goes up every 6 months, but it's spread across such a large base of everyone that enjoys a beer, whether it be in the pub or the club or the restaurant, whether they enjoy buying a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of rum, where the tax on that's about $38 in a $60 bottle. Treasury have just worked out these sort of small taxes across a broad base. They just keep increasing, they keep indexing, and they sort of hope that no one notices. And honestly, it's unless we have shows like yours that try and spread sunlight on the issue, because certainly no government in the last 35 years wants to bring it to anyone's attention, especially in this cost of living crisis, where apparently, enjoying a beer or a whiskey at your local pub, club or restaurant isn't part of the cost of living equation.
It sure is, and that's why we wanted to talk to you, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. Stephen Ferguson there from the Australian Hotels Association. I must remember to take this up with Pauline Hanson when next we speak to her on this program, because her fundraiser, she sells that Rum Nation rum and the Pauline Hanson gin to make money for those brilliant Please Explain cartoons. She's always also raising money for the government, isn't she? Every bottle of gin or rum she sells is tipping more money into the government's coffers as well.